Okay, so welcome everyone. It's good to see you. Now this week's topic is dealing with challenging emotions, particularly emotional management or emotional balance, however you want to call it. And so today I'm going to walk you through 3 ways of dealing with challenging emotions. We're all experiencing challenging emotions multiple times every day. Yeah, I'm not talking about the really, really harsh ones, the really big ones, the tough ones. But stuff that challenges you. Things that like annoyance, being irritated, feeling frustration, getting angry at things, impatience, fear, worries. Yeah, we can experience all of these emotions multiple times throughout the day. For some people, even multiple times throughout an hour, they experience various challenging states they go through. And it's important to know how to deal with these challenging emotions. Before I go through those 3 steps, it's important to add that you want to practice them when you're not facing challenging emotions, when you're not facing the really tough stuff. You want to practice them with small things, like small disappointments, small stress, like leaving the house from an air-conditioned room and coming into the hot midday sun. And it's hot, and maybe your wife's still inside of the house and she takes her time and you're waiting outside for her ready to go, but you just can't go, or something like that, like small stuff, right? So notice that this is where you need to practice. And even before you even deal with real emotions in real life, you want to practice it in your mind, seeing yourself doing those 3 steps before you actually do them for real. It's almost like sandbag training, like a boxer trains on a sandbag. There's a purpose for that. The purpose is not to defeat the sandbag. The purpose is to get skills which you can use in the ring. The same is true for meditation, visualization techniques, where you're actually going through the steps calmly in your mind before you're challenged by a real emotion, so that when the real emotion comes, you're prepared. You know what to do and you know how to do it. You've shown your brain and your body and your mind beforehand what to do. So you will feel more prepared when something bad really happens, or difficult feelings come up. So that would be important. You can do that each morning, each evening, each lunchtime, or whenever you have some few minutes to be free and you're currently working with your challenging emotions, then you can do it in these times. I also recommend you to take a time like 20 days or 30 days where you're really just practicing with emotions. So it's really focused. Now, your spiritual practice is only about that. And throughout these 30 days or 20 days, I really recommend having a diary, writing things down. So you see what works and what doesn't. So you can let go of what doesn't work and practice more of what works. And then you can structure your day around challenging emotions. That makes it less overwhelming in the terms of spiritual practice, makes it more focused, and you get much more out of it than dabbling around for years. Yeah, because it's very focused effort. You have to find out what is your personal difficulty before you actually do these kind of challenges. You go into 20-day period of just only working with something. This requires honesty. You need to know what you personally struggle with, because nobody else knows, right? And on top of that, most people avoid what they struggle with. They don't want to face it. They don't want to look at it. So I want to have a happy time. I don't want to really look at myself, because I know when I restrict myself, when I keep myself from distractions, then the things are there that I struggle with. And even in retreats and so forth, people would then avoid go into the pool, have a conversation with the other guests. It's always the same, and I see it every week, and I see it within myself, the tendency to avoid myself and to avoid looking at what is in my way of actually being more happy and fulfilled. There's always this kind of background stuff going on, which keeps me in a constant state of being kind of dull in my mind or something like that, or maybe very chatty in my mind, or just dissatisfied. It's not that pleasant being. And so in order to make it more pleasant, we have to face those things that keep us from actually enjoying ourselves. Because naturally we do enjoy ourselves. If it wasn't for all the stuff which is kind of blocking it, which is in the way. Naturally the sun is there. If it wasn't for the clouds, you could see it. So when it comes to working with clouds, it's always good to have structure. It's always good to have a certain goal. And I'm going to work on my challenging emotions. Let's say maybe your challenging emotion is anger. Or lack of forgiveness. Yeah, being angry at someone, or being angry at yourself, being angry at the world. Or maybe your challenging emotion is fear and worry. Constantly worrying about something. Then take that challenging emotion and work particularly just only with that. And observe your progress day after day. Then prepare before the emotion hits. I just said that before, right? You want to prepare it by visualizing how you will go through the steps when it happens. And then finally, I will now walk you through all these 3 steps. The first step is to stop. You kind of stop with whatever you're doing. Kind of almost like freeze. The Buddha has this example of becoming like a wooden log. Just becoming totally still. Stop even moving your body if you can. If you're in a situation where you're alone in your room or something like this, stop everything you're doing. Stop distracting, stop fidgeting around, and stop moving the body. Just be there, quiet. Still the body. And then, stopping also means stop doing anything to what you're experiencing, which is always the first impulse that we have. It's to do something to it. Oh, I'm feeling pain. I must do something about that, right? That's what we all experience. When you're experiencing painful emotion, what do? You want to get rid of it. You want to push it out of the system. It's almost like an unwelcome visitor. Yeah. Ajahn Brahm tells this beautiful little story of a monster that invades a king's palace. And all the soldiers, they try to keep it from entering the palace. And yet it enters, and it stands in this big throne hall, and it just stands there, and it's really stinky and looks disgusting, and everyone is kind of like insulting it. And with each insult, the little monster grows a little. It becomes bigger, and eventually the soldiers start pushing against it, trying to push it out of the palace, and it becomes even bigger. With each push, it becomes bigger and stronger. And more smelly and more disgusting. And so it becomes this huge monster eventually filling the entire throne hall. Until, I think it's the king, he has this idea, let's reverse that around. With each insult, with each push, it becomes bigger and stronger. So why not try to be kind to it? And so he says something kind to it, and the monster becomes a bit smaller. And soon enough, everyone starts to be really kind to this monster. And as everyone, all the soldiers and so forth, become more and more kind, the monster becomes more and more small, eventually so small that it just disappears. I'm not very skilled at retelling this story. Ajahn Brahm is doing a greater job there. But the point of that story is pretty clear, right? It's if you are resisting and pushing against your emotions become bigger because you're giving them power with your resistance. You know that saying, right? What you resist persists. Have you heard that before? What you resist persists. And so if you are resisting your feelings, they persist. They can't go away because literally you don't allow them to go away. Because you're busy dealing with them constantly. As long as you're trying to deal with them, they can't leave. That's why people mostly suffer for extended periods of time. Say after a relationship breakup, after they've been fired from their old job, after they've experienced loss in their family. They go through it over and over and over and over again in their mind, coupled with resistance. They produce the feeling, they feel it, and they hate what they've produced. And then push against it, and the feeling becomes bigger. Then they have even more hate. And so it goes round and round. And of course, the whole narrative in the mental storyline supports this growth of our emotions that we are resisting. So that's why the first stage is to stop. Stop fighting, stop resisting, and feel. Feel what you are feeling. Stop avoiding. But take your time to watch and to experience what your heart is trying to desperately get into the field of your attention. Our hearts are very, very, very clever. They want you to release what your pain, you can say. Your heart wants you to release your old pain. And so it shows you the old pain. And if you always say, I don't want to see that, the heart takes it right back into itself. And it slowly poisons the heart and eats the heart. Each time you push it back in. So when your heart presents you with a painful emotion, a painful feeling, your job is very simple. Pay attention. That's that one thing that human beings are really bad at. Paying attention to themselves. We are very good at paying attention to outer space, exploring outer space, paying attention to other people, paying attention to our jobs, paying attention to our thoughts, paying attention to this and that. Paying attention to what we feel, pretty bad at that. Actually exploring how it is like to feel. Not just negating it, saying, no, I don't want to experience that. It's too painful. It's painful because of resistance. It's not painful as such. An emotion is not painful as such. Resistance makes it painful. Fighting against it makes it painful. Trying to get rid of it makes it painful. And that's a difficult one to accept for most people who haven't experienced that in their practice, in meditation practice. There you have to have some faith. You have to have some faith in the direction that if I do that, my emotion can be released. If I leave it, if I give it space, if I stop messing with it, then it can naturally just pass. But as long as I'm messing with it, it can't pass. That there's this famous example of the glass full of water and dirt. And if you each time when you steer in it, the dirt stays all over the glass of water. It's undrinkable. What you want to do is wait. And the dirt will settle, right? And after a while it has settled enough so you can actually drink the water. It's a very old technique of purifying water, of making it drinkable. You put it in a vessel and then you wait for all the mud to settle down. So you don't have to drink the mud with the water. The same is true for emotions. As each time you're messing with it, you're steering it up again. You're not letting it be. You're not letting it go. You're not letting it pass. That's all that this emotion wants. It wants to move on. So we got to stop messing with it. That's that first step, right? The second step then, after having really received it, giving it space, the second step is then to breathe deeply and slowly. To bring your attention to your breath. and see what your breath does with the emotion. When you're breathing in very, very long, breathing out very, very long, you can actually also count your breath. What do you notice? What's happening to the emotion if you start to breathe slowly? Because what slow breathing does, it suggests to your body, your brain, your nervous system, that you are not in danger. You are okay. There's no danger. Because when we're experiencing heavy emotions, then we're in fight or flight mode. We're stressed, we're wired, we want to get out of this. Yeah. In fact, there is not really any threat to our health also. It's just in our head, it's in our minds. There's no real threat. We're kind of spiraling down into that all by ourselves. So it's important to suggest to your body, but using the breath, that everything is fine. The body is okay to calm down. And so by slow breathing, by deliberate breathing, conscious breathing, everything starts to slow down. That's the second step. The third step is, once you have calmed down enough, to start to think in ways that create further insight or deeper understanding of the situation at hand. Many times when we are bringing ourselves into emotions, we see things in a very distorted way. Like, for example, well, that bastard cut me off on the street. And we're really angry at this guy. When we see his face as he passes by in his car, we see this ugly, disgusting guy that dares to cut me off. And this is distortion. We see it from the perspective of anger. If you are angry and you look at the object of your anger, at the apparent object of your anger, if you're angry at your wife, your husband, for example, and you look at them, how do they appear to you? Depending on the degree of your anger, they appear disgusting. Something that you want to get rid of. And if the anger turns into hate, you can't even stand thinking about them. It makes your skin crawl. If you've experienced real anger towards someone, then you know how that is. As soon as you think about them, you see them as this disgusting, despicable person, is absolutely unworthy of love and deserves to be punished over and over and over again for having hurt me. That's the way anger sees things. And so after having calmed down, actually, at first, having received your anger, acknowledged it, then taking a few deep breaths, actually allowing your body to wind down, to calm, then you start to think in ways that are more appropriate. For example, thinking in terms of kindness or forgiveness or understanding. Something helps you to connect with that other person. I just experienced it last week. I have one person in my life that I really don't like. I have really difficulties with that person. Very hard for me to be kind towards her. Every time I hear her voice or I see her, I feel just, feel just angry inside. So at the moment I'm working particularly with that. And so I have to confront this. I have to work with this. And I do these steps. Well, first of all, I calm myself down. And then I would talk to myself in a way that allows me to understand her. Doesn't even mean that you have to just talk to yourself. You can also talk with other people. For example, I talked with my wife about her, and she told me something about that person that I've never heard before. She told me about how stressful her life actually is and how hard she has it. I never knew that, actually. That allowed me to see her in a different light. To see, wow, that's where she's coming from. Well, that's kind of understandable. I wonder, how would I be in that situation? Probably the same. I would be on edge, stressed, And how am I when I'm stressed? Am I a very pleasant person to be around? No. How am I like when I'm angry, when I have a tough time, when I'm physically not healthy? How am I like mentally in that? Yeah, pretty unpleasant, I guess. And so you can understand other people. So I help myself to understand that person. Okay, that person is just another human being like I am. And that human being is struggling like I am. And we both try to be happy. Both of us don't want to suffer. And we are limited to the current state of consciousness that we're in. That's our limitation. We can only act coming from this present state of consciousness. That's our only kind of field of action. And that's different for all of us. And it helps me to understand. Once I understand, I can talk myself further into forgiveness. And over the time, if I do that daily, each time I encounter that annoying person, I first of all let go of my annoyance. In other words, I forgive myself. Then I move on to understanding her pain as she goes through her difficult life, talking to myself like that. I understand her. And over time I notice that when I see her, I'm not feeling annoyed anymore. I'm not feeling angry anymore. I've, over a few days, changed the way I relate to her spontaneously and naturally, due to repetitively thinking good thoughts and letting go of negative ones, harmful ones. Because in the end, the people who hold on to negative, harmful emotions, they keep hurting themselves. We're hurting ourselves. Nobody benefits from that. We're just inflicting pain on ourselves. There's a saying, I think, being angry at somebody is like drinking poison expecting the other person to die. But you drink the poison of anger is inside of yourself, it's not in the other person. And so it's wise to let that go and replace it. So the last step, the third step, could be called a step of changing or replacing. That's a very important step. You just don't only let go of stuff. You replace it as well. That's the practice, right? So you let go of anger, you replace it with patience. You let go of hate, you replace it with forgiveness. You let go of jealousy, you replace it with joy, sympathetic joy. And all that can be cultivated through thought, by using thoughts wisely, helping ourselves to go through that. But we have to first let go of the filter that doesn't allow us to think well. That's the emotion. So that's why you have to stop, accept and acknowledge it. First step, second step, breathe deeply, allow yourself to calm down. Third step, replace the old thought pattern with a new, more empowering one that serves you and others, that helps you to forgive, helps you to grow as a person. So these are basically these 3 steps. And you want to practice them always before you're faced with a drastic emotion. Go through it. Next time I see my enemy, I'm going to be doing this. And then you go walk yourself mentally through the steps. See yourself getting annoyed, then see yourself accepting the annoyance and breathing through it, relaxing, and then thinking in a different way. This is what I'm going to do next time when I encounter that challenging thought, that challenging person, that challenging situation. The more you prepare yourself, the more you have a plan, an action plan, the better. Yeah, sometimes it's really not enough to tell people, just be present. It would be enough, actually, to tell people, just be present. But for many people, this doesn't just work, I found. It doesn't work. Most people are not that dedicated to the practice. They can't just be present. There's too many struggles going on, too much stuff coming at them from every corner. So rather than just telling them, be present, just let it go, which would indeed be the right thing to do, most people are not ready to work on that level. So you want to arrange situations, learn from them, grow from them, until you're able to break through enough so that you can just be present and it's enough. Then it would be ending at the first stage of the practice, seeing it, stop. And you see it clearly. That's that. You're done. Many, many times when I'm practicing with some challenge that I have, like noise, for example, if I'm aware before the noise kicks in, I don't get annoyed, not a bit. I'm happy that there is a challenge, but I'm not challenged because I'm aware. But if I'm not aware, that's when it gets me. Like I'm working on my emails and there's this noise and it disturbs me, and then I'm not aware in that moment, I get annoyed. Then I have to receive the annoyance, breathe, let go, replace. Next time I will do it better. But if there is awareness, that's already, the challenge doesn't arise. It's like if I told you right now, I give you 2 minutes to make yourself suffer. Go. What does it take for you to make yourself suffer? Do whatever you're usually doing. And do it consciously. And you will see it doesn't really work. You have trouble with sadness? Well, try to be sad. I give you 2 minutes to be sad. Go. It'll be really difficult. Why? Awareness. You're conscious. You're awake. So the dreamy stuff in our heads doesn't really work. Does that make sense? But if you are not awake and it just hits you from the back door, you don't really know what's going on, what's happening to you, suddenly you find yourself in a rage. So cultivate awareness. If you cultivate just only the first step, that should be enough. It deals with the whole thing. Stop, accept, release it, leave it be, don't touch it. It passes right there. It lingers only to the extent of your resistance. This is something really deep. For those of you who have more experience already with practice, you might have seen that. Heavy, difficult thoughts and emotions linger only as long as there is even the slightest amount of resistance. If there is absolutely no resistance at all, aka no craving for it to go away or to stay, it immediately dissolves. But as soon as there is some agenda, it stays. As soon as you need something, as soon as you confront yourself with some need, there, it will stay, it will linger on to the extent of that need. And if you're just present with it, it comes and it goes right there. This is a funny thing to observe. It's easy to do this with things that are not challenging. You can just let them come and go. But as soon as it becomes something that you're invested in, it will linger. Okay. All right, so that's pretty much all that comes to mind for today. Are there any questions?